Welcome to our Value Innovation Pricing Vodcast, where we put value at the core of every conversation. I'm your host, Karen Chiang, Chief Value Officer at Ibbaka, where we believe value isn't just a buzzword. Instead, it's the secret sauce that drives growth for sales, company valuations, innovations, and for customer success. Today, we're in for a real treat. Joining us is a true value creator, Oz Cutullo, a powerhouse in product and pricing strategy with over 25 years' experience. With a career that's taken her from the bustling markets of Turkey to the boardrooms of global giants like Microsoft, GE Healthcare, and Pearson, Oz's passion for unlocking value across industries is matched only by her knack for turning complex challenges into winning strategies. And she has the awards to prove it too.
Karen, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's just start off with this conversation about value. And maybe you can share with us, what does value mean in your world? And share a little bit about the impact that you've seen.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, today we're going to explore the evolving definition of value, how it's priced, how it's monetized, and how AI culture and strategy are redefining this critical domain. I want to start my comments with a quote from someone I admire, Warren Buffett. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. That's how Warren Buffett defines it. So, in today's world, value is what customers believe that they get, and that is a moving target. So, let's expand this in a bit. So, what does value mean today? It is no longer just features or just efficiencies. In my mind, what customers understand from value is outcomes. For instance, in healthcare, it is a right diagnosis at the first time. In software, it's the productivity uplift. In industrials, it can be emissions avoided or downtime prevented. So, for instance, at GE Healthcare, when I was with the company, we went from, we stopped selling scanners into starting to sell confidence in diagnosis
Mm.
into days, patient days saved. So, the challenge, of course, is that in various companies, you have different stakeholders that would define value very differently. From the standpoint of the CFO, it could be ROI. For a product, it could be the roadmap impact. For customers, it could mean frictionless experience, which is why alignment on the definition of value is very critical. If we can't define value clearly, we cannot price it confidently.
And Oz, I really like that observation there for GE Healthcare, because I think we often focus on the economic impacts, and we typically build our value models on the economic impacts. But in some industries like healthcare, we have the health economics outcomes research type of value drivers. And so, very much so, that example that you mentioned is more around the quality of life being impacted.
Yes, absolutely. So now rallying around a definition of value, of what value the value proposition is giving to customers is critical. But we once we do that, we need to move from value creation to monetization. So pricing should be the mirror of the value position and
Yeah.
not some legacy spreadsheet or pricing table somewhere. Leaders in all industries are moving from pricing models based on outcomes, not just product specs. For instance, at Tenneco, which is automotive parts manufacturing, I led global pricing transformation across the aftermarket division, 3 billion division at the time. We
Mm.
moved from cost plus into value-based pricing. We started understanding the type of value that our products are legacy and long-lived brands like Monroe, like Moog, would give to the installers who were actually installing the product in a repair occasion. We started evaluating value drivers like the vehicle park coverage, meaning what percent of the vehicles a particular part is able to be used for the repair, delivery reliability, catalog accuracy, and then first time correct, meaning being able to repair the product car first time with the installation of the product fully so that there's no redos. Again, in terms of the principle that we have done there, we created cross-functional value consoles that
Mm.
included marketing, product, sales, and finance, and we all came to a common understanding and language, same value language. Again, we can't scale a pricing strategy if value is defined differently in every presentation, in every customer event. We all need to sort of come to the same common ground as we understand and talk about value and eventually price it.
And I think there are quite a few points there which, I wanted to point out, because when we think about value, it is really a collaboration with the customer, right? In fact, we really have to listen more so to how the customer perceives value rather than how we perceive value, because value should be seen in their eyes. And as you say, when we're able to really have the mirror of price to that value, then you're able to scale that monetization to the value that your customer is perceiving that they're receiving. And the other point that I love that you brought up is that value is very much a team sport. So it is not held by one person. As you said, there are multiple stakeholders involved: marketing, product, sales, finance, especially because finance is trying to count, of course, the cost, which isn't how we want to price. Cost maybe can set a floor, but technically, we believe that when we price on value, we're able to really drive what matters for the customer and as a result, increase our pricing power. So that was wonderful.
Absolutely. Just like you've mentioned, again, just like the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, value is in the mind of the customer. And the types of value drivers that would bring the meaning to that value could change over time. As you
Mm.
would remember, back in 2021 timeframe, we had such a supply shock across the world. So, like for instance, being able to meaning having availability of product, being able to find it easily, order it, and get it delivered, has always been a value driver in any industry. But during that time, especially in the aftermarket, the importance of that particular value driver has increased tremendously. So again, that value and the value drivers change over time and it's situational, which is why it is very important to continue to assess what is important to the customer, how are they perceiving our value, and shift and reflect changes in the markets accordingly as we try to associate the price with that value proposition. And in that, there's a number of innovations that we can rely on. For example, AI and Gen AI uh, brings a lot of agility into pricing. We can do scenario modeling. We can really sharpen our saw in terms of segmentation, needs-based segmentation, which is very much aligned with value-based pricing, and
Mm.
really having an easier time to understand intent signals from the market, meaning the purchase behavior and the intent signals, and being able to have that knowledge as we think about pricing the value proposition. So we can use in the as we think about, like, for example, sales force copilot or people AI, to really further personalize and bring those value points to the segmented customers in real time, if we know
Mhm.
what their value drivers are and if we have segmented them in the right way. On the industrial side, digital twins support the outcome-based pricing tied to uptime and then performance, elimination uh, of downtime. And then finally, we have AI-powered pricing engines that really helps the sales rep at the end of the day manage the complexity of pricing without necessarily slowing down the deal process. So that
Mhm.
all said, in my mind, what is the biggest innovation in pricing? It's the mindset to shift
Mm.
from how do I protect my margin, how do I price to cost, into how do I monetize what makes us special, what makes our value unique. So from that standpoint, I think the technology is the engine, but mindset is the ignition.
Mhm. Wow, that's quite a few important points that you brought up there. So I'm just going to reiterate a few of them. So one of the first points that you mentioned was that value changes over time. And absolutely, I think there are a number of factors that go into that shift in value over time. The example you gave is more of a external factor because, as you know, supply chains were affected with COVID. So there's the external factors, but then in terms of value changing over time as well, I think we also have to think about where our customer is in our engagement or customer journey with them, right? So I know that from the very first instance of the sales process or the buying process, there are certain things which that particular buyer or the decision making unit is looking for, and then sales will, of course, negotiate and present the value and the impact. But of course, over time, we have to think about how quickly can we generate that promise in the sales cycle for a customer, because then we shift over to how to say onboarding and customer success. And we all been in those quarterly business reviews where again we'll have to demonstrate and, as you say, reaffirm, revalidate, and assess, do the values that we sold a few months ago still hold true to the customer that we have in their current cycle. So that's one point. And then you quickly shifted over to the big innovation, which I think every industry is seeing and trying to utilize, which is AI. And thank you for sharing, how AI is affecting not only the sort of buying process, but selling process, in terms of having these co-pilots, which can help guide those conversations, or as you say, before that process to help segment the market. And of course, I think from our world where, we are tasked with, obviously quantifying value, positioning value to then come up with a packaging and pricing strategy. I think a lot of the work that I know for us anyway, would take months for us to do, has reduced our time to weeks, if not hours, in certain cases. And so I think, again, we're able to get good result and be able to be more responsive to our customers. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in the space of innovation that you are sort of seeing in the pricing world? Because I know that we have often talked about value-based pricing, and I know that your examples, we shifted away from, features and functionality, which is more about, how our applications do things as opposed to impact. But do you have anything more to say around shifts in what we're seeing in terms of how people are thinking about pricing strategy? We've talked about, I think, The last couple of years, it's more been about outcomes-based pricing. But are we seeing anything more in terms of pricing innovation?
Yes, definitely. So I think, in sort of wrapping up our conversation, I would like to sort of recap some
Mm,
of the action items in terms of how we can get to that next level in terms of engineering the value and delivering the value and pricing the value that we
good.
can deliver as value officers. So I think, we talked about aligning on a shared value narrative. I think this is the innovation that I'm seeing in the market, between sales, marketing, finance, being in sync in terms of talking about value and what that value means to us based on our understanding of what it means to the customer or different customer segments. And secondly, very importantly, building pricing as a capability, no
Mm,
longer thinking about pricing in a static way, in a spreadsheet way, but a living and breathing capability that adjusts, to your point, to different changes in the market, in customer mindset, and different value drivers, how they change throughout time. And then finally, really starting small with experimenting with Gen AI,
mm.
very easily put into use in terms of generating value messaging, really thinking about how do we segment our customer sets based on their observed behavior, like churn or
Yes.
risk of churn. And obviously, you and I have already been through many decades of CPQ, like continuing to build more AI and Gen AI based capabilities into smarter CPQ implementations. In other words, not just digitizing pricing, but reimagining it based on value. So just to wrap the conversation up, I think value and pricing are living and breathing systems. They require alignment, they require insight, continuous insight from the market and our customers, and bold innovation. I think the future will belong to leaders who can connect that customer insight with the intelligent automation. They can price it and like they mean it.
Perfect, Oz. I really love that. I think that is the key point to take home is that it is really about being able to take that customer insight to then translate it into value that matters and creating innovations and solutions that address those needs. And that brings us to the end of this episode of our Value Innovation Pricing Podcast. A huge thank you to Oz for sharing her expertise, stories, and practical wisdom. As highlighted, value and pricing are strategic levers for growth, resilience, and lasting customer impact. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, give us feedback, and share with your network. Topics you'd like to explore? Connect with me at Ibbaka or via LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, value is core, innovate for value, price for value. Thank you.